Damage to armor versus crit damage. These are two variables that may look easy to understand, but it's actually more complicated than it seems. Almost every build that you see in the game or run into are rocking contractors gloves, and even after the recent nerfs, it's still manageable because it's only a 2% nerf to them. But still, very few truly understand when to use and when not to use damage to armor and when to substitute for critical damage. So today we'll be talking about damage to armor versus crit damage. So starting with armor damage, this is a multiplicative attribute that makes your weapon more effective against armored targets. It is great with weapons that have a very high base damage or consecutive long-lasting damage. So your marksman rifles, your regular rifles, and your LMGs should be put in these categories and should be the only thing that you use with damage to armor, and maybe some shotguns here and there. The misconception is that this talent works on everything. Unfortunately, it doesn't. The reason for this is because that multiplicative damage is situational and is only beneficial to most weapons that can hit over the threshold, which is going to be a 200k per shot at base damage or pump out more than 100 bullets before reloading. This will be your LMGs, of course. When it comes to that high base damage, you're looking at your rifles. Some assault rifles roll with damage to armor, but they don't benefit as much from it because they have a very low base damage that doesn't reach even 50% of that threshold. If you put that damage to armor on SMGs or AR or pistols, your result will be meaningless and a waste of a gear slot. Some pistols can benefit from it, like Kendra's Liberty, and that is because it has a very high base damage. However, when it comes to other things, damage to armor is just not something you want to use. With certain shotguns, you can benefit from damage to armor. However, due to the pellet spread, you lose most of the benefits from that buff, and the reason for this is because your damage on shotguns are divided into each pellet. If you look at the M1A, what makes the M1A build so powerful is not that the damage to armor is what is really giving you that buff, it's because of the high base damage, which armor damage needs to be highly effective. That is why the previous M1A nerf felt like a murder to that weapon. Why did it feel like murder? That was because the base damage fell under the damage to armor threshold, which is that 200k that I explained earlier. M1A dropped from around 235 to around 141,000 damage, which was a very bad thing for that weapon. So what about critical damage? Because that is basically what we're trying to compare damage to armor to. Critical damage is an additive before multiplicative. It is a weird calculation, but picture it as PEMDAS. That is the best way to look at this. When you're looking at the factors that applies to your overall damage, you want to look at critical damage because it is just so amazing in the way it works in this game. This makes it ideal for weapons that innately come with a very low damage output, so your SMGs, your ARs, a lot of your pistols, even some shotguns will benefit from critical damage, and that's one of the beautiful things about it. The more hits you get with these weapons, the higher the critical benefits. Critical damage is also universal as it synergizes with all weapons, mostly with high RPM. For the same reason, some LMGs will benefit from a hybrid of crit damage and damage to armor, but not all of them. A few of them will get the highest benefit from it. Damage to armor is an independent factor in builds. It is not something that you can put on everything because it's mostly effective against bosses. While if you're looking at critical damage, it is universal, it is flexible, and can be applied to everything, and I mean everything. So don't think your build is bad because you don't have contractors gloves or anything like that. You're only missing one element that can be substituted without problems. As a matter of fact, if you don't use contractors gloves, you can find something better that will make your builds even a lot better than a lot of people who use contractors gloves. With the whole thing out of the way, I hope this helps you in understanding that damage to armor is not good on AR and SMGs, and contractor gloves does not go with everything. This is the reason why the developers put it on an LMG piece. The only reason it worked with rifles is because of the high base damage, and we talked about that earlier in the video. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.